data being used. And last but not least, quite a few of the data points are dated in the sense that situation has changed from when we made this presentation. But we shouldn't bother about it too much because luckily for us, population is a very predictable thing. It does not change drastically from year to year. So if the growth rate of population in some society is 1%, it will go down to 1.05% or something like that. It will not change too much. So with these kind of preliminary remarks, let me start. A last remark. So this is, I'm doing it online. I prefer very much more to do everything offline because I can see the faces of people. I can see whether whatever I'm saying is making sense to someone or not, whether I need to go slow or not. So I would request and as Piyush mentioned, I've done a lot of comedy shows also, which are really tough to do offline because I don't even know if my jokes are landing. Not that I'm going to make too many jokes, but anytime you feel something that is what I've said makes sense to you, please do write something on the chat. If you have a question which is urgent in the sense that you have stopped understanding because of that particular doubt, put that on chat. Otherwise, just if you keep telling me that you have not slept off or gone for a chai or something like that, that is also welcome. I really thrive on feedback which I get from the audience, and it's a challenge for me to kind of do it online. But your chats would really help me. So let's get started. So 3 facts to get us started. So did you know that population of India is more than that of all countries in Africa? That is, the population, I'll repeat, population of India is more than the population of all of Africa. Or did you know that if Uttar Pradesh was a country, it would be the 6th largest country in the world? And by some counts, a third fact, recent as in the immigrants in the last 100 or 150 years, and the descendants may be more than 50% of Assam's population. These are all facts. And why are they relevant? Because size, growth, and changes of population are very key to understanding a range of issues: political, social, economic, migration, environmental issues, all kinds of social issues like women's safety. We have worked on all of these, agriculture, everything is the underlying dynamic is population. So if you look at our 3 examples, I'm giving you very trivial reasons why these are important. But the first one, a lot of times we see comparisons. For example, just a couple of years back, we were comparing COVID mortality in the raw numbers and saying that this or that country had much less COVID mortality than India, but it would be so. India now, and at that time, was almost is now the most populous country in the world. So if the mortality is highest, it's not surprising. Why is it very important that Uttar Pradesh is 6th largest? If it was a country, it would be the 6th most populated country in the world. Because if you look at, say, Uttar Pradesh, and if you look at any economic or social indicator like per capita income or childhood mortality or life expectancy, either social or economic, if we change that, if India manages to change that in Uttar Pradesh and say Bihar, all of India changes significantly. But if we change that in a smaller state like Haryana or even much smaller like Sikkim, it does not make a difference to the entire state. And why does it matter that more than 50% of Assam's population is either a direct immigrant or a descendant? Because whether we want it or not, population, our identity determines how we vote, and politics is very much dependent on that. So if we want to understand politics, we need to understand immigration, not just in Assam, but everywhere else. Another quick note I wanted to make was that whenever asked how in general and me in particular, we are talking in the positive sense, not in a normative sense. What does it mean? We are saying what is the reality, not what it should be. So if I say something is the reality, does not mean that I'm saying that is good or that is bad. I'm just trying to say this is the truth based on the data that we see. All right, let's go ahead. So what would we look at? We will look at size and growth. We will look at how India is going to grow and how is the fertility changing. We will look at how fertility varies with region, with religion, and a lot of things, other things, and how differences in fertility across India change migration and how does it change politics. We will look at the difference between in demographic data between men and women, specifically focusing on the very. So I said we don't do anything normative. We don't say anything as we should be, but this is something which is very normative. India has a very dark spot, which is pre-birth mortality of like sex selective abortion, which causes the gender gap, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We will talk a lot about urban and what is urban, what is rural, because that is a kind of an input to economics quite a bit. And we will finally address the big question: is India overcrowded? So if you are like me, I'm more than 50 years old, but if you are like me or slightly younger and you have grown up a little bit on watching Doordarshan or government ads, even on walls, different walls, you would have seen a lot of ads on how important it is to keep population down. And funnily enough, now we see a lot of countries in the world where they have a reverse problem where the falling population is an issue. But those ads and the fact that if you live like me in Mumbai, you feel all the time, oh my God, this country is so crowded. And this feeling underlies, again, a lot of discussions when it comes to climate change, when it comes to environment, when it comes to how the population should use resources. So at the end of my presentation, we will talk about this. And hopefully the answer that you get there to this question is going to surprise you. All right, let's jump into size and growth. So as I mentioned, this slide is slightly dated. Now we are, as per projections, we are more than China. But again, the important thing to note is not the exact data, but the scale of the data. So the now the largest, the most populous country in the world, India, is at 140 crores. And if we look at Sweden or New Zealand, they are less than a crore in population. Especially New Zealand is very interesting. So anytime you see a comparison between India and countries like New Zealand and Denmark, I would suggest that you should just throw out the whole analysis, because New Zealand, if anything, should be compared with Chennai or Ahmedabad, not with the whole of India. It sounds very obvious, but we will see, but we keep seeing articles in newspapers and sometimes in respected sociological and political science journals, which talk about this, which make these kind of comparison. And in my view, the only country that is comparable to India in terms of size, in terms of complexity, in terms of history, is China. And as aside, we have been doing some work on that, making those comparisons, and you can find those on my Medium blog. So as I said, these comparisons are not at all valid. Some of those comparisons are India is the 10th largest economy. I don't know if it is fifth or fourth or third or something like that. It'll become third soon, but obviously it'll become third soon because it is the most populous country in the world. Comparing Denmark has 100% share of 100% of electricity of Denmark comes from renewables is a headline that we used to see all the time. That is like saying Chennai is 100% renewable. If you do the accounting as they do in Denmark, that the total energy generated by renewable sources is more than the energy they consume, we can very easily say that Chennai is 100% renewable. Of course, the reality is way, way more complex than that. So as we like to say, this is not an apple and oranges comparison. This is a grape and watermelon comparison. And we should be kind of careful of not doing that. Of course, this kind of comparison can happen outside media too. Very recently, I think 2 or 3 years back, Supreme Court led an initiative to reform Board of Control of Cricket in India. Now, which was a needed initiative. But one of the things Supreme Court did was to say that every state has to have a vote. And it is more complex because some states already had more than one association, Maharashtra, Gujarat, for example. But this particular measure meant that Sikkim, with a population of 6 lakhs, has one vote, the same as Uttar Pradesh. which has a population of 23 crores. Now, this is so it is remarkable because a district in Uttar Pradesh will have way more cricket players and fans than all of Sikkim. And if you have been to Sikkim, you will, as an aside, you will know that most of the state is not suitable to play cricket because it rains all the time, and they are not interested in cricket in any case because football is the game that they prefer. Seems like a trivial example, but let's look at an example with consequence. Again, headlines all the time that keep coming up that India is the third highest emitter of carbon dioxide or something like that. But of course, it will be a high emitter of carbon dioxide. We have a very large population. Unless we do a per capita emission comparison, such emission comparisons are meaningless. Actually, when it comes to carbon dioxide, even per capita emission comparison is not correct because, and this is again an aside, because carbon dioxide is a stock pollutant. If carbon dioxide was sent in the atmosphere 100 years back, it is still there. So the right comparison is actually per capita, not emission, but per capita in the atmosphere already attributable to different countries. And once we start doing that, India comes nearly at the bottom. And these kind of things are very important if we are not correcting for size and growth. So is India still growing? What does fertility mean? Let's look at that. And just before that, I'm just going to quickly look at the chat. Yeah, the questions that they are being asked, we are going to be addressing that. So let's look at fertility now. So we feel, and rightly so, that India's population has increased quite a bit since independence or in the last 70, 80 years, and this is true. But one thing we should note is the whole world's population has also increased quite a bit. And this is a whole topic we can go into. It has happened because of nitrogenous fertilizers, changed the game in terms of crop yields, and it also is because we are able to use energy from fossil fuels, etc. But this is something to be realized, that India's population has increased quite a bit in the last 70, 80 years, and so has that of the whole world. Is India's population still growing? So again, this is slightly dated figure. The fertility is now below 2.1. And fertility is what a woman, how many children a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. Now, India's fertility is at or below replacement rate, depending on the way you calculate, because India also has a skewed gender ratio. So taking all of that into consideration, a lot of demographers believe that our fertility is now below 2.1. Now, one of the things people feel is now that the fertility, again, I've seen newspaper headlines saying that fertility now is below 2.1, it means our population has plateaued or now it will start decreasing. This is not true. This is an intuition a lot of people share, but this is not true. And the fact is, UN projects that our population will keep growing till 2065. Again, there are some demographers who say that our population plateau will happen earlier than that, maybe in 2060, or maybe even slightly earlier. But it is not going to stop. India's population is not going to stop growing in the next 20 years for sure. That is very, very clear. And why is that? If the fertility is below 2, why is that a population will not stop growing? So it's because replacement rate is misleading. It's not for a country. It is for a couple, or more specifically for a woman. So in any young country, you will see a population pyramid. You will see that, like, for example, today our population pyramid looks roughly like this. 41% of our population is between 0 and 19, and only 1% is below 80. Now, fertility refers to the first 2 brackets, right? Not to this bracket. So the population will keep increasing till the women in the first 2 bracket have their 2.1 or 2 or 1.9 children. And that will keep happening till the whole pyramid becomes like a rectangle. So 25 years later, we will see that the population densities are different, and the whole pyramid slowly becomes a rectangle. Until that happens, the population of India will keep increasing. There is a very interesting, a very nice Hans Rosling video on YouTube. If someone wants to see that, he has done a similar kind of illustration using cardboard boxes for the entire world, why population will keep increasing till a particular point of time, even though fertility across the world has fallen, right? So the fertility varies quite a bit across India by states. It varies by whether area is urban or rural, and it varies a lot by religion. And this is something, one of the kind of consistent, shall I say, news items every time a census report comes out or a survey comes out. So let's quickly kind of look at fertility by religion first. And I'm taking Islam because this is where most of the attention is. So yes, first fact is true. The share of population of Muslims in India has increased since independence. There is no doubt about that, as the graph shows. It is also true that the growth rate of Muslim population is faster than the growth rate of Hindu population, although the gap between the two keeps increasing because Hindu population starts at a much higher rate at 1951. You will see the decadal growth rate is higher for Muslims than it is for Hindu. But the thing to note is it is falling for both of them. And that is the question. There is the thought that goes on that there is something inherent in a particular religion, which means that it will always have higher fertility. Is it true? It's true if you look at countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan, but it is not true if you look at Iran and Bangladesh. Bangladesh is our neighbor. Iran is not too far away. Both are Islamic countries, and they are the fertility rate is now at replacement rate in both those countries. In fact, you look at Jammu and Kashmir, the fertility rate is pretty low, and it is a predominantly a Muslim population. So there is nothing inherently in a particular religion. This is a debate we have here in Western countries or in South America. The debate will be about Catholics, but there is nothing in a particular religion, and data worldwide shows that very clearly that belonging to a certain religion does not mean a high fertility. You can see, this is again mildly dated graph, but you can see fertility is falling across in Afghanistan and Pakistan. You can see Bangladesh is already near us, as is Iran. And this is a consistent thing, whether you look at state-wise populations in India or you look at worldwide population densities. Across the Gulf, fertility falls. Why does fertility fall? The big determinant of fertility is the chance of survival of infants. And this is extremely logical for anyone who has been a parent or otherwise who is a human being. If couples feel that their children are very likely to survive, then they tend to have lesser number of children. This is the big reason for fertility for all across the world. And it's kind of, again, well-established demographic principle, something that we kind of ignore. Although government policies don't, they also kind of try to make sure that the infant mortality is low, because as soon as first of all, it's a good by itself. In a democracy, if the infant mortality is low, it is a fantastic thing. But otherwise also, if high population bothers you, as it has our administrators for a long time, making sure that the infant mortality is low is the first and basic step to make sure that people can think that their children will survive, so they don't need to have so many. Once you take care of the basic things, then you see that if more women are educated, they are doing jobs, or the place is more urbanized, or if contraception methods are available, then the fertility falls. If a population is more religious, the fertility is going to be higher. Doesn't matter which religion, by the way. So if a population is religious, the fertility increases. So these are kind of well-established demographic patterns that people have observed in India as well as across the world. All right. So we see, obviously, the infant mortality is linked to prosperity, and prosperity is linked to fertility. And again, if you look at data, we broadly see, we know that southern and western states in India are more prosperous, and we see that the fertility there is lower. And we know that north and eastern states are not so prosperous, and we can see that the fertility rate is higher. Although there are some exceptions like West Bengal. West Bengal may not be as prosperous as the southern states, but the fertility there is also lower. And you can see a little bit of exceptions, but broadly the pattern is very clear. So reduce infant mortality, and a precursor to that is to kind of just make sure that there is a lot of prosperity and everything changes. If a high population is something that bothers you, and I'm keep saying that if, because the debate in a lot of other countries have shifted to falling population. China, for example, is seriously worried about its coming, what some people call demographic collapse. But maybe technology will change that. Maybe it won't. It's something that we'll see in the coming decades. So what happens when fertility in poorer states is higher than fertility in richer states? One of the things that happens is you can see that over a period of time, more people are represented by fewer members of parliament. So as the figures show, one member of parliament in Tamil Nadu represents fewer people than a member of parliament represents in Uttar Pradesh. Now, this is a kind of a tough problem ahead of us, which is going to be coming, because if we say 1%, 1 vote, very clearly the value of the vote of Uttar Pradesh voter is less than the value of voter of a Tamil Nadu voter. So they could argue that the state needs more members of parliament. Tamil Nadu people could again rightfully argue that they have done a lot by becoming much more prosperous. And because of the prosperity, the growth rate has fallen. So they should not be politically penalized for this. And to me, both these arguments are very, very valid. And I think these are so valid arguments that in the past 50 years, we have stopped discussing about it. In 1977, we froze the state-wise members of parliament. The freeze was till 2003. It was extended till 2026. We will see what will happen in 2026. Seems like a very tough and intractable problem, but my hope is we will solve it as we have solved in this country a lot of intractable problems. So for example, 15th Pay Commission had a similar problem. It had to decide how much of 15th, not Pay Commission, Finance Commission, I'm sorry. So the 15th Finance Commission had to decide how many of how much of the tax revenue collected by center should go back to states and to which states. And now population is one of the factors. So what the 15th Pay Commission did was to say, yes, population of UP and Bihar has increased, so they deserve more. But the demographic performance of South Indian states is better, so they deserve more. And the industrial performance is more, so they deserve more. So it did kind of balancing act. And as long as the revenue kept increasing, all the states were fine with what the 15th Pay Commission did. So 15th Pay Commission in some senses was a similar problem that has been tackled by India. And all of us don't even know it. It didn't become a big issue. And my hope is that we show similar pragmatism when it comes to the whole representation issue when it comes up again in 2026. Other consequences of fertility is that if there are poor regions with a lot of people, a lot of young people, and there are richer regions with not so many young people, there will be migration. Migration is a big deal in India. So let's look at that. But quickly, just give me a minute so that I can just look at the chats. So was MP to population ratio skewed in 1947? My understanding, and don't quote me on that, it was fairly similar, except for very small state. That is a question. CO2, we can have a longer discussion in the question answer session. And if I'm not able to answer it, I will send you links later. All right. So let's quickly look at fertility and prosperity across states and what is happening there. So it's a very difficult question to answer. How many migrants are there in India? And once you think about it, it's how would you know? If any of you, and a lot of you, I'm sure, live in big cities, or if you have at least gone to big cities, you will see that any vibrant city attracts a lot of migrants who come in for some time, work, and then go back. How would you know? Because census, when it does, first of all, it is doing once in 10 years. And when it does, at that particular point, someone comes to a Mumbai locality and counts the migrants. But that migrant may himself, and I'm saying himself deliberately because most of the migrants are male in India, That migrant may go back in 3-4 months. Lot of people come to work to big cities, work for 4, 5, 6 months, go back. So migration in India is very male dominated, very circular. It's not necessary that people just stay there. So it is very difficult to figure out how many migrants are there. And we saw that in COVID. There were visuals of a lot of people in lockdown going back home, but it was not clear how many migrants were actually there, how many stayed back in the places they had migrated to. Nobody can actually enumerate them. So census has one estimate. Economic survey sometime back did a very good job of collating different kind of estimates. You can go through them and you can see the the scale of difference in the numbers. But even so, in general, people had say that 17 to 29% of our workforce is migrant. But if you take a 20%, 100 million migrants are there every year. And it's a very fascinating subject. But it's not, if people are quantifying it, they are estimating it. There can be good estimates or bad estimates, but there is no accurate way of finding out how many migrants are there across the world. Why do people migrate? As I said, economics is a big thing, but there is also a very distinct cultural element. So there's a gentleman called Professor Chinmay Tumbe. He is in Ahmedabad, a professor there. And he had pointed out to us once that Ratnagiri for many decades has had a population sex ratio where the number of women is much more than number of men. And that is because there is, for a lot of time, 50, 60, or maybe 100 years, there has been a culture of Ratnagiri men folk going out to different parts of literally the world to work. So at all times, a significant section of Ratnagiri men folk were in different places. So population sex ratio was always kind of skewed. Similarly, now Ratnagiri is fairly prosperous and relatively speaking, and a lot of it is because of migrant money coming back, but migration still goes on. Goa, reasonably prosperous, but it sees a lot of out migration. Kerala is, of course, one of the unique places which sees in and out migration both. So there is a strong cultural, Purvanchal region, again, a very big place for out migration for hundreds of years now. You can see Purvanchal people in West Indies, Fiji, Mauritius, all kinds of places. So this is something to be kind of aware of, that there is obviously an economic element, but there is also a cultural element. People from an area migrate, but because people from that area have been migrating for a long time. So, and you can understand that if a person from my village has migrated and started earning well in Mumbai, then when I see him back in my village, I say, can I also get a job? He says, why don't you come with me? I stay in a small kholi in Mumbai. I don't get a job for 2-3 months, but I at least get something to eat and a place to sleep. And that allows me to search around and get a job. So having people from my area and my family, my village in a big city allows me to migrate. So there is a reason why there is the culture of migration is important. Where do people go to? People have been going to Burma as in before it was Myanmar. People have gone to Fiji, West Indies, Mauritius, within India, Delhi, Surat, Punjab, Kerala. All of these are places where migration happens. It just depends on opportunities. If there are opportunities, people from impoverished out migrations cultural areas will go to in-migration places. And as I mentioned earlier, migration is male-dominated and circular. But a significant percent stay back, marry, settle in a new place also. So very kind of graphically, this is what is happening. You see from east and north, people migrating out and coming into west and south, very broadly speaking. Just a very quick anecdote I want to share. I've been going in my career to Chennai off and on quite often. And 20 years back when I used to go, if I spoke in Hindi to a local auto rickshaw person, that person was bound to get angry. And 3-4 years back, I had gone again, and I was at one of those very typical places, very local places like Sangeeta. And I was having a meal, and I noticed that of the 10 or 12 waiters there, only one was Tamil speaker. So he was actually rushing from customer to customer and interpreting for his Hindi speaker colleagues, because nearly 90% of the waiter staff in that restaurant was migrants. And this is such a force that it just cannot be, it cannot be, a place starts getting prosperous, some jobs the locals don't want to do, and the people from outside will come and do it. And that will cause problems. This is bound to happen, but this is bound to happen, and this will happen. And this is a challenge that our country more or less has kind of tackled fairly well. And I hope that it continues to do that. So the challenges caused by economic and other migration, political challenges, if you want to see a kind of a poster child of a place like that, it is Assam. History of Assam is incredibly complex. If people are interested, they should get an expert, and that expert can probably talk to you about for kind of 2-3 hours to just talk about demographic history. But I'm going to quickly take you through this. Till 150 years ago, Assam was an independent kingdom. Ahoms used to rule it. Then Britishers came in and started putting tea plantation there. And the workers for those plantation came from southern Bihar. During 1900, a lot of Bengali Muslims came, and the river areas were cleaned, forest areas were cleaned up, and farming started there. And a lot of Bengali Hindus were bought by British to do the administrative work for the tea gardens. There were original Assamese middle class people, Bengali Hindus, Bengali Muslims, migrants from Bihar, and also there are tribal regions which have their own very distinct identities, which I'm not going to get into that. Now, the first part happened all in British-controlled India, which was because Bangladesh or Eastern Pakistan was part of India, so it was all within one country. Post 1947, the migration continued from East Pakistan. In 1971, in the Bangladesh War, a large proportion of refugees came to Assam, and that kind of changed the demographics very drastically. So if you today look at Assam and say, how many people in Assam are migrant or descendant of migrants? Because if I come and settle in a place, my children legitimately are natives of that place. But the 100-year-old natives may not think so. Again, what should people think is not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying this is what happens in every place. So there have been studies, and a study done in 1981 suggested that in 1981, nearly half the population was already descendants and their children. Post that also the population, Muslim population has increased, and it has increased from 24% to 34%. And this will and has changed political dynamics. Again, not saying what is good, what is bad. This is what will happen. Again, if you want to dive deep, I have written 3 blogs, but I'm saying 3 blogs I've written on this topic, but they are also scratching the surface because this is a very complex issue. And when demographics change, political alignments change. It is not always going to be what you think it is. For the longest time, the Assamese middle class and Muslim migrants were one bloc fighting against the Bengali migrants. It changed in the last few years. And my expectation is anywhere we see a lot of migration, this will keep changing. And in some senses, these kind of political changes are good. This is because there are people have worries, and the way to handle those worries in a democracy is to let these blocks change and let the balance of power keep shifting so that it does not happen that one group totally dominates the other. I'm sorry if someone is an Assamese here or has understanding of that and feels that this is a very shallow. I agree, this is a very shallow example, but I think it's a kind of a very spectacular example of how immigration changes politics in an area. And people more interested should definitely dive deeper into this. All right, quick look at the questions and quick look at the time so that I know where we are. So audio, there was an audio problem. Is the audio okay now?
I think it is okay. Yeah, I think it seems okay based on people replies in the chat. Yeah.
All right. All right. So let's quickly 11:10. Piyush, we have 10 more minutes or something like that.
Yes, if we can wrap up in 10 minutes, then we can have some time for the questions as well.
All right. So in which case, what I will do is that I will leave the gender gap. I am just quickly going to say that this is, as I said, most of what we say is positive and not normative, but this is a normative thing. It's a shameful thing for India that we have sex selective abortion. But there is a kind of ray of hope, not confirmed by census data because the last census has not been done. But there seems to be, Haryana seems to have reversed its really awful record of sex ratio at birth. Again, I have blogged about it. Do go and look at it. I am cautiously optimistic that this dark spot on kind of India's track record of human rights or societal actions is we can see some change in that. With that, I'm just going to go into my last two sections.
Yogesh, there is a bit message on the chat that people want to just quickly have a look at the gender slides as well. If you can just spend 2 minutes on those slides, there is some interest there. 1 or 2 minutes maybe.
Okay, it's I guess two things to note is we have always had a bad sex ratio of population even before sex selective abortion became widespread. This used to be because we had excess death of girl child or maternity deaths or poor access to nutrition and medicine for women. That has started changing, but what has happened in the last 2-3 decades is widespread availability of sex selective abortion, which is illegal, which is people do a sonography, find out the sex of the fetus and abort it if it is a female. Illegal, but used to be still very widespread. Again, much more in, not linked to prosperity as much at this time, but much more in west and north. South and east is way better. There have been persuasion campaigns quite a bit saying that a girl child is as valuable. Data shows that they were not as successful. What Haryana has done is, in the last few years, has really gone after offenders, like done a lot of sting operations. And it's a tough, again, these are, if we get an expert here, they can talk about it for an hour. This is a tough thing to do. Because if you are doing a sting operation, you need a pregnant woman who's either a police woman or a government officer to actually be a decoy and go to a doctor. And when the law started clamping down on Haryana, people started going to neighboring states of UP or Rajasthan, which are neighboring and very close because Haryana is a very small state. So the law had to go there, take permissions. The chief ministers had to cooperate and do sting operations in those states, in Delhi, in UP, in this thing. And then you have to kind of make sure that there is a lot of follow through. So it seems to me, I'm cautiously optimistic that it has started making a difference in Haryana. The sex ratio at birth has started improving, but I cannot be 100% sure till census data comes out, because the source of this data is the registration system at registration offices, which are spread across districts. So that data is collated, and the quality of that data is never as good as that of census. So whenever the census data comes out next, we will see. I'm just going to take very quick thing on our life expectancy. Our life expectancy nowadays is 69 years, or it might be slightly higher now when we measure it. So this is the life expectancy at birth. So first thing to note is it is 60% up from 1960s. And this is a it's something the country should be proud of, because this is a very clean indicator. If people are living longer lives, that means there is enough nutrition, there is enough health, and of course we can do better in all of those things. But it clearly means that India is making economic and social progress if this expectancy number is going up. Second thing that I've seen a lot of people getting confused is 69 is at birth, but if you are surviving for every year you survive, your expectancy increases. So if you are 70, obviously your life expectancy is not 69, it becomes 85. These are averages. They change quite a bit. Again, poorer states have lower life expectancies. Villages have lower life expectancies. Men live shorter than women, unlike earlier. Now women have started living longer, which is again a sign of developed society. What do we die of? Survey data, cardiovascular and blood pressure kind of diseases have started becoming dominant again in India, which is in some senses a good sign if infectious diseases have started falling. This is the crude death rate. If you want to compare anytime the deaths from COVID, etc., this is the crude death rate. COVID deaths were very small proportion of that, however way you count them. I'm going to quickly take you through my last two topics: urban-rural continuum and is India overcrowded? I do need to spend 3-4 minutes because that is one of the reasons I started doing this whole series. So India lives in villages used to be what Mahatma Gandhi said, I think. If you look at data, it still seems so. If you look at data, if by administrative, so what is a village is not easy to figure out. There can be a lot of things. And why is it important to know what is a village, what is a city? Very broadly, if you're looking from an economics point of view, if a lot of people are living together in a concentrated space, they can support a lot of businesses. So for example, I live in an apartment block with 100 flats. I go to villages which have 100 families. So my apartment block, 100 flats, is next to 10 such apartment blocks. So we as a set of people can support a lot of shops for chai, for groceries, for all kinds of things. A lot of businesses, people come here and do ironing for us. There are watchmen, whereas my apartment block population may be the population of a village. So clearly that village will be able to support far fewer businesses. Secondly, then most of the people in that village will be employed in agriculture, which is, as we know, doesn't give you so much net income as most other occupations in India. So one thing to remember is India's definition of what is urban is very, very strict. We say the population should be more than 5,000 and density of people should be more than 400 people per square kilometer, and more than 75% of working male population should be engaged in agriculture. Nowhere in the world this strict definition is there. By administrative definition, in 2011, only 26% of India was urban. If you looked at census, what census did was a lot of places don't become, administrative definition means where there is a gram panchayat instead of a municipal corporation, very broadly speaking. If you looked at census, what it does is it takes the strict definition, more than 5,000 people, more than 400 people per square kilometer, and 75% engaged in agriculture. Then 31% becomes urban. A very interesting social economist called Partha, he did a study in 2001. He said, what is important from an economics point of view is, are people living away from close to an urban center? When he did that, he said 52% of people are in urban India. And another paper, which is much more recent in the last few years, 5-7 years, based on 2011 census data, he said, let's look at only more than 2,000 people, 500 people living in an area. A lot of cities in Europe call it urban. If we do that, 65% of India becomes urban. So when we say urban India says this, rural India says this, we should be aware that urban India, rural India is a very, it really depends on definition what we mean by that. And when we go to, this was all 2011 census, my guess is if we look at 2000, whenever the next census come out, we will see by these definitions that urbanization is way more than what we think. Of course, this kind of urbanization doesn't mean that urban amenities are available in those habitations, but we should be very clear why we are saying something is urban or rural. Why do we want to say that? All right. One thing to remember is a lot of places prefer to be rural. They prefer to be ruled by Gram Panchayat because electricity rates could be different. The permission required to build houses could be different. Programs like Manrega may be available only in rural places and not in urban. So a lot of places don't become urban. States also don't want them to be urban because as soon as you make an urban local body, the state has to support it and the state doesn't have the money to give. So what is urban, rural is there is all kind of complexity in it. All right. As we are running out of time, let us come to my last question. Is India overcrowded? As I mentioned, growing up, always I had almost a sense of guilt or a shame, thinking that yeah, हमारे यहाँ पे भीड़ बहुत है. India is overcrowded. And once you start thinking like that, you feel that when it comes to energy, it comes to any kind of modern resources, energy, minerals, materials, you start feeling per capita, every Indian has less of a right on it as compared to less dense places. But I realized something, and I started looking at, did a comparison of India and Africa. Like Africa is 10 times the land mass of India, and it has lesser population. Clearly, India is overcrowded, but it is not so. Thing to notice, population today depends on population 200 or 300 years back, when the modern fertilizer and energy systems had not come. And population 200 to 300 years back depended only, and I'm just talking of the old world, forget Americas, Australia's, because the whole migration history there is a totally different thing, but the old world of Africa, Asia, Europe, if you look at, the population in all those places 300 years back depended totally on the fertility of that area. River valleys with fertile soil, highly populated 300 years back across the old world. Let's take examples. Like Egypt is smack in middle of Sahara. I think more than 90% of its population is a few miles from Nile. Nile is what gives it agriculture. And this is not today. From 5,000 years back, it is highly populated because of Nile. Indonesia, Java is 7% of Indonesia's population, has more than half of 7% of Indonesia's landmass, more than half of Indonesia's population. In China, half the size of United States, the river region, more than 1 billion people live there. So this is across the old world, you will see the same thing. Highly fertile land, lot of population, and that lot of population has become even more with modern fertilizers and energy systems. India has I've said here, one of the highest arable lands, but some measures say it is more arable land, which is a measure of agricultural or fertile land. More fertile land in India than even in US, China, Russia, any other large country. So it is no surprise that we started with a very high density of population. Even all of Africa's land is only 30% higher than India. And then Africa has a history of not getting domesticating crops, and it couldn't even get from the fertile crescent wheat, etc., because of Sahel and Sahara. So the agricultural development in Africa was slower for a lot of geographical reasons. But even forgetting that, the 10 times land mass of India, the amount of arable land is only 30% more than India. So if we feel that, oh my God, there are so many people in India, no, it's not that. Historically crowded regions have become more crowded. That has happened all over the world. India is not overcrowded. It just has a lot of fertile land. Very, very quick summary. We have looked at India is really large. Comparison should not, even for many states of India, they are much bigger than many countries. So we should be very careful of comparisons. Population of India has grown very sharply, but so has the rest of the world. Our fertility is as a replacement rate, but we will keep growing for a lot of time. Significant differences by region in fertility, and this has migrations on politics as well as migration. We have a shocking record of treating our women, but there are some signs that we have started seeing progress in India. Life expectancy of birth at India is 69, which is very good. A lot of improvement since independence. A lot of more improvement can be done, but something to be proud of. We think we are rural, and it seems so when we look at census numbers, but if you look at alternate measures, then we see that actually we may not be that rural. And the last and not the least, we feel we are an overcrowded country. Not really. We just have a lot of land like Nile Valley or Java, which is very fertile. Most other countries have very, very small proportion of such land. China has a concept called hue line, which is like if you goes from north east to southwest. If you divide China by that, only 5% of population lives in the one half, and the other half is crowded, and it's not even half. 60% of that is west of hue line, and only 5% of population lives like that. So we not just Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, which is the whole Gangetic plain, but there are a lot of other fertile areas, like even in Tamil Nadu, which are very fertile and hence very high density population. Thank you very much. I have done a very quick go through because of time, but also because we cannot be taking too much time on such a topic. Please do go to the blogs I've written on Medium. This thing is there. Follow Ask How, follow me on social media, Twitter, etc. We do, and we have already done a lot of work like this. Again, thanks a lot for attending. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this.
Thanks a lot, Yogesh, for such a nice, enriching and knowledgeable experience, actually, the information. So it was really, I think, helpful. We have 4 to 5 minutes, so I think I can quickly take a few questions which people have asked.
Yeah.
So I think some of them we already answered them. So there was one question on the CO2 side. If you want to quickly share your views on like it's. So Ramesh asked, like, not sure. I agree. CO2 does get recycled, but humans are putting up a lot more than that we recycle to insist on historic total is incorrect. Yeah. Right. Any thoughts?
I'll take 2-3 minutes on that because it's a very important question. So first of all, there is no doubt that there is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it has been caused by burning of fossil fuels. There's no doubt about that. So I agree with him. What is to be remembered is the current flow, how much we are putting in every year does not matter as much as the stock, which has been there for hundreds of years. Okay. So countries that started burning fossil fuel hundreds of years ago have put much more of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than we have today because they have been doing it for hundreds of years. Second thing to remember also is that if you look at modernity, there are some people like Václav Smil who say that actually modernity is all a game of using modern form of energy. So if you look at steel, cement, anything, infrastructure, or you look at food production, so much modern energy and nitrogenous fertilizer goes into it that if you remove all of that, today's 8 billion population just cannot be supported. It will have to go down to 2 billion, and most of the people will be working, carrying manure to the fields. So modern energy is incredibly important. It's a conundrum that is not easy to solve. So both the forces are working. Now, countries and societies which have already taken advantage of a lot of energy consumption in the past should not be held to the same. We should not be held to the same standard as them. So right now, our per capita CO2 emission is way below most Western democracy. But if you actually look at the stock, how much India has per capita put in the atmosphere, we go down below 100. We are really minimal. And what I will do, Piyush, is I have written in detail on this. So I'll send a link of that to you, and maybe we can put it in email and send it to people. But this was a very short answer to a question, again, which can take up an hour of discussion.
Sure, definitely. Thanks, Yogesh. Yeah, and there was another question from Shija, like, can you please touch upon how population affects the status of education in India? I believe this is a pretty wide topic and probably not for today. Other thing, like some comment from Harish was that like an idea for a comedy show or just India in numbers, if you have not already done that, something like a Freakonomics trivia about India, something can be done. Feedback probably.
No, we can do that. So we did we have been doing a series called Discovery of India. So we did a quiz on not on just population, but on a lot of things. So maybe we can do on 15th of August, we can do a quiz on population. We can do that. That's a good idea. So somehow I have not been able to mix comedy and my Ask How work at all. So if someone thought that yaar ye to banda bilkul funny nahi tha, and you don't come, please come to my show. I'm very different in a comedy show. So, and I don't do stand-up, I do improv with the team, and we are very funny. Even if I say myself, please come for that. But I have not been able to mix. That is a great suggestion, but I have not been able to do that. All right.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, we look forward to see you in the comic role, in the comic position. Okay, great. I think there are some other questions, but I think we have run out of time.
Hi,
Sorry.
Piyush. Hi, Yogesh, Sita. So I think, we can, the remaining questions possibly we can ask, but, I think a quick summary and thank you, Yogesh. There was much of details and, covering them, and your summary was so good, but there is so much to delve also. But one last question, on behalf of IIT Hyderabad chapter, my question is, what are your suggestions? Like first thing is you made us all think in a very positive way that population is very good and we are in a very good position right now. And it's because of the fertility or having good fertile lands. So with all this, what are the next steps? Your ask how, what do you think your message, to this audience is, for us to take it forward or spread this word?
I think, ma'am, you are you asked a question which will keep all of us here for 5 hours, but I will try to answer it. I'll try to answer it very, very quickly. I was just going through the comments also. A lot of people felt that it was too fast. This presentation in slightly earlier version is available on our website. Please go again, look at my blogs on Medium. I have explained everything in 15 different blogs. So I appreciate it could have been a lot to take in. So please, if you want to kind of follow up on any topic, deep dive. To answer your question, ma'am. So this is a very multifaceted question, but as we see, basic economic prosperity solves quite a bit of things. And for a country like India, the state we are in, I would say the biggest imperative would be to get our manufacturing right. And it will take us a lot of time to get manufacturing right. This is something we have been writing. In fact, my next piece coming out is on China's manufacturing, and it is a marathon that we have to run. We may have started a little bit, but we have a long way to run. The biggest thing would be to get manufacturing right. That will increase the overall prosperity quite a bit. To get manufacturing right, we have to get energy right. And if we are getting energy and manufacturing right, it will have impact of environment. We'll have to get that right. And of course, you will have to get education right, and you have to get urbanization right. You have to get a lot of things right. But I'm in general quite hopeful when I look at real things. If you look at from year to year, you feel, "Arey, kuch nahi ho raha hai." But if you look at long time frames, India has done very, very well. In fact, a lot of my audience members would have directly contributed to India doing well in small and big ways. And we should continue doing that. And so if we want to get into more of those details of how to get manufacturing right, how to get energy right, on Ask How website, there are a lot of pieces. Me and my colleague, we write on Medium also. Follow us. So we have a point of view. There are others also who write very well on these. These are really complex topics. No one person will have full knowledge. But we try to make this knowledge more accessible to everyone. So do kind of read what we say on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Sita. Thank you, Yogesh. And on behalf of IIT Bombay Administration, overall Hyderabad chapter, as well as the central office, who have been instrumental into getting this session successful, thanks to the whole team. And thanks a lot again, Yogesh, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. I posted a YouTube link as well for everybody, so you can see it there. Otherwise, you can search also on YouTube, and then you can find it.
Yeah. Just to kind of repeat again, askhowindia.org is our website. You can go there. On SlideShare, you will see all this as well as all other SlideShare that we have done, which is there on the website also. Website also has our blogs. It is there on my Medium page also. You have my Twitter page. I have a Telegram channel, a lot of way of dissemination. Anyone can, if anyone join, I'm really obliged that they are spending time reading what we do.
And this deck is also available, I believe, on Ask How, right?
This deck is available on Ask How. And Piyush, if you have taken down all these questions on the chat, if you can send them to me, I'll just send an email, and we can put all those links as well as answer to these questions, and we can send an email to people who have attended. That'll be good.
Sure, definitely. I'll do that. Thank you. Great. Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you, Yogesh. Yeah, we can drop now. Thank you.
Thank you.